Welcome to the BPV Design Podcast. Today is episode 1, and we're going to be focusing on the creation, the ethos, and the experience behind equity in design. If you're listening to this, you've probably seen the presentation and potentially even gotten to interact with some of the pieces in person and actually form a tangible relationship with these things. But today I'm just going to talk about the process, how did these things come about? What was it like to, create these things, not only from a physical standpoint, but emotionally, mentally, and just what that entire process was and, what it continues to be. With this, I want to create a space of reflection and, hold open space for, an emotional reflection on, allergy season. Create space to, reflect on, the emotions of being a Black low-income student at a PWI, sacrificing your mental health and just even physical well-being for, a university that frankly doesn't care whether you live or die, as long as they get a check. And I know that sounds, morbid, but it is a reality that I don't feel like enough people have been honest about. I'm sort of over the whole concept of artificial or this forced normalcy that we've all been acting under in this entire time of doing art school and design school online. So it's been something that it's been a constant. It's been truly very impactful on all the work that I've done for the past few semesters. It sort of is an elephant in the room. But even as frustrating as it's been, it still led me to some pretty interesting creative choices. It's definitely defined a lot of my thinking about luxury design and just who these things are for. I think it was really, and it still is, a whole thing of why design with equity in mind. Why focus on the future of luxury. I think these topics came about sort of in the complete absence of these things in my personal life. The luxury, I'm not the quote unquote Parsons kid. I don't come from mommy and daddy money. I'm from right here in Jersey, and right now I'm recording this inside of a little green bedroom in New Jersey with a twin bed and a sewing machine on the desk. So this is a project, that discusses equity, but from the perspective of somebody who is completely disenfranchised from that concept, in material and also, by the institutions that I call myself a part of or have, I've been identified as a part of. And from living, outside of concepts of equity and luxury, it did, it prompted me to create these things, sort of from nothing. Or maybe it's speculative luxury, I can't tell you what luxury truly is. It's not something I have in my real life. But I knew when, it came time to, create luxury and create an equitable experience, my own experience, very much informed it. I just knew that whatever I was going to create for this thesis, given the background of being a low-income, Black student at this university that does not care about Black people, I wanted to create something that doesn't, hold space for privilege. I wanted to create something that begins to explore luxury where money isn't the prerequisite for access. Because my whole thing is, I wanted to create something something that rich people can't just buy their way into, and this is one thing, I've been observing in design and in fashion where there's this phenomena of like, rich people buying the clothes of and sort of cosplaying the working class and working poor aesthetic, while like, these people in this class and of this class don't reap any of the benefits of, of the aesthetics that we create. And if you're black, if you're black, brown, especially if you're not rich while being black and brown, you know what I mean, and you know what I say when I say niggas can't have shit. Like, there's almost nothing is sacred to us or beneficial to us, without being, 10 times more, profitable for a lot of times, the wealthy white audience that co-ops it. Um, so I wanted to create something that's, in the lines of like, for us, by us. And in a word to describe what that process was, it was arduous. Um, it never necessarily got any more easy. And it was especially difficult, creating this thing, knowing that I have basically zero access to all of the resources that I would generally need to, do thesis level work. Despite the fact that, I'm still paying for them, still, putting myself, well, I think the ticker is at $210,000 into debt I am right now. So it's like the thing is I'm doing all of this work, for allegedly, for the validation of a primarily white institution. I'm destroying like, my financial stability in the future for this primarily white institution. I just feel like this school has taken enough from me. I've given everything I have and more. So my focus isn't going to be on creating comfort, or creating something that benefits the people who benefit from this school. It's going to benefit the people outside of it, and it's going to be something that where accessibility to the wealthy is just not something that I'm necessarily interested in. In the same way that, providing equity and accessibility, to disenfranchised people is just something that the university is not interested in. So this, I guess, is kind of made out of response to that, in response to, the Parsons attitude, in response to, what you understand about the school if you go here or if you teach here. I chose to focus on workwear because, one, because, there's a long relationship that I have with these items, with these aesthetics. I come from, a town in New Jersey that's very much, working class. It's not even like, pretty and shiny suburbia, like take somewhere like Glen Ridge or Montclair. It's very much working poor, blue collar. The people here, like, we're all a paycheck away from being on the street. So it's so this project is an homage to that variety of American life. And also, like, the workwear has always been the uniform of, the class that I belong to. It's something that, I've been seeing as long as I've been around. Like, as a kid, I remember seeing, my grandfather, my uncles, and everyone, like, in these clothes, just these clothes were indicators of people who work and do labor. They weren't these sort of things to become these new basics in the closets of, rich college kids and influencers. And I think a lot of this, like, or the drive to do workwear, kind of occurred to me through, my own sensibilities as far as fashion. Like, I have this vintage Carhartt jacket that, comes from, it's actually used to be owned by, I think, a oil laborer in Texas. And I bought it, a few years ago. And there was this thing where, like, some people would really, really, really gravitate toward this thing. And it's like, oh, man, this is so nice. Where'd you get it? This and that. And, you can tell them, or I've told people. But the thing that I eventually noticed was your money can do nothing to secure this item for you. Money is not the prerequisite for access. This wasn't bought at a luxury shop or anything like that. Your money is not going to bring you any closer to having this item. And my thing became, how can I replicate that reality? Create these things where you can't just simply buy into this thing without making it in some way, shape, or form equitable for the people who produce it. Whether that be, the direct, whether that be the community that makes the aesthetic, fashionable, or whether that's the community that, makes this garment at all. So that's the laborers, that's, garment workers. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, how, do you create equity in that? And that's eventually, and also at the same time is, I'm sort of racking my brain to figure out how is this possible, or how am I going to do this? I feel like there's been the NFT surge, and I feel like that's a really important technology. And I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the NFT work. Recently there was this thing of they're selling one of Basquiat's pieces, and basically they're selling it as an NFT with an option to destroy the original. So the NFT is definitely in a very strange place as far as its relationship to creative work. But I wanted to use it as a means of, creating equity for the people who create these garments on a very literal level. So, those who have to do the work of creating these things, I want us to have something to show for it. So that's why, I propose taking this entire project and the means of, producing this project. So those are the patterns, the technical specs, and even the documentation of the ones that I made. I want them, I plan to, compile them into an NFT and basically share them with members of the Workers United garments unions, basically so that the value can shift, the value in luxury. I wanted to shift away from the brand and the sort of manufactured scarcity and, material and labor exploitation. I wanted the value to shift from that to, I want the social capital to shift from that to the laborers and their work. That's what defines the luxury. And I think also we have this thing of luxury being, or culture being luxury. And a lot of that is a lot of this whole notion of culture being luxury is just a result of the wealthy taking a curatorial stance on the aesthetics of, the quote unquote lower classes. But I want to create something where, we're in control of our own aesthetics. We're in control of our own narratives. And under this framework that I'm creating, there's no way for you to engage with this product, for you to, co-opt these aesthetics without, enriching and creating equity for the communities and the literal people who make these things. So now, if we're going to have money as the prerequisite for access, let that money not be going to Bernard Arnault and LVMH. Let it be going to the people who did the physical labor of producing this garment. It makes no sense that you can have companies paying people 18 cents an hour to create things that you then sell for hundreds of dollars, or things that even if they're sold in a store for $20 and then sell again for the secondhand market for $50, $100, $200. No, you have this thing that's that's desirable, but none of that equity is returned to the people who created it. They've already been exploited and will never see anything from their labor, and that's just not a framework that I'm interested in even contributing to, much less facilitating. And again, this is coming from somebody who, since the age of 14 has worked. So it's like, what am I, 21 now? So it's been 7 years of working. And I understand I still have roughly 4.5 decades left of this. So it's been important to, create these things from the perspective of working class people, where like I'm not interested in creating luxury for rich people. There's enough of that. There's a ton of it, and still that's somehow not enough to the point where even my brokey aesthetics are still co-opted by those with luxury, by those with by those that luxury has always been created for, by those who have always had access to luxury. And I'm definitely inspired by the designers who are subverting luxury, sort of turning it on its head, and getting rid of this notion that luxury is just hinged on exclusivity or inaccessibility. And one of my big inspirations for that, of course, Telfar Clemens, um, just like this whole thing of the luxury lies in the community. The Telfar bag is, and I've said this, like I used to say it especially before I had a few. The thing was like, it's fundamentally a plastic bag. It's not real leather or anything like that. But it's still like, perceived as luxury within its own community. And especially now, like, the bags aren't as accessible as they used to be. Or you can't get your hands on one the same way that you used to be. And it's not really a thing of manufactured scarcity, because, these items do exist for everyone. And even when you could get one, it was still, deemed as a luxury good. But the luxury was like, it was luxury for a very particular community, for a very particular demographic. And it's like, the thing was, it wasn't about the amount of money that you spent on one, because for a long time you could always, get these items at retail. The luxury, it was something else. It wasn't luxury on the same terms as Louis Vuitton. It wasn't luxury on the same terms as like, Chanel or Guerlain or any luxury brand, the quote unquote luxury brand that we've seen before. Sorry, my allergies are really crazy, so it's I might be a bit nasally right now. And I wanted to keep building on that. And I think it's partly our duty as Black designers, and I don't know, I hate to put more labor on Black people in design, put more labor on Black people in general. But I feel like as people who have been ousted from fashion, ousted from luxury, for generations, whether that's being followed around in retail stores or being depicted in dehumanizing ways by Helmut Lang and in fashion photography and things like that, and just overall being disenfranchised from luxury and fashion despite being the inspiration for a lot of this shit. That's something that I wanted to bring into imagining luxury, and imagining a new framework for consumption, as a Black designer, as a low income Black student at a white institution. And it's interesting, like creating work for the validation of this institution, knowing that and especially like given 4 years of going through like racism and classism at this university, it was something. And it's like it's still something that like this hasn't been shown to anyone at the school yet, and it's I'm still kind of concerned that whether or not anybody will actually get it, much less resonate with it. But it's honestly at a point where it's like I can't go into this like fearfully. I kind of have to be confident in it. Like I believe in what I'm doing here. I believe in in the possibility of like of a future that has circumvented institution, that circumvented like this need for validation from rich white people. And if you're hearing this by now, you've probably seen it. And I really hope that I was able to nail that, or at least like, plant some seed for, this framework. And I really hope that it touched, some part of you. And specifically, like, I feel like it is important to list, intention and stuff like that. So specifically, like, I'm talking to, other Black and indigenous, like, people of color designers, or creatives, or, consumers of fashion. I'm talking to, like, the thing is, like, I'm not doing this so much for the validation of those who, literally don't care about me, people like me, or things like that. So that's really who this project is designed for. It's really to honor and to, enrich our lives and, our perception and things like that. And it was also something like, I just wanted to channel positive energy and negative energy into, like, I'm not a big fan of positivity culture, but like this project and, this whole thing of we're going to do art school online has been unbelievably frustrating. Like, to think that I'm still paying, what is it, damn near like 45,000 a year for, you know, for resources that I can't access. That was a big part of this, and it was extremely frustrating. So that's just like, one aspect of, this energy, and like, you start to harbor this sort of animosity towards the institution, on top of several other reasons, to harbor animosity towards this institution. So it really did become this thing of, I just need somewhere for to release all of this energy. Like, I found myself extremely, like, depressed and anxious and, just really mentally in a horrible spot for a lot of this project. And it's like, I wanted to give that energy, some form of outlet, to sort of create out of what's been, like, a traumatizing experience. And I feel like unfortunately, so much of Black creativity has always been informed by that. It's always been sort of what goes into, or sort of that's like what informs our creativity so much, especially, in spaces that we're made to feel unwelcome in. So as unfortunate as it is, it is a reality for Black designers. And it's like, I could be continuously upset with this reality, or I could do something to, subvert it. And the things, like, if I've been put in a place that's not welcoming to me, what can I do to, design a space that, isn't necessarily worried about the institutions, that aren't worried about me, that aren't worried about people like me. And that's the whole thing of creating equitable design. So that's a bit of the personal attachment that I have to this project. And it's going to be interesting to, have this thing be quantified and validated by people at this institution who have very limited experience with poverty or with disenfranchisement. It's going to be interesting to see how people who genuinely and honestly can't relate to what it is to do 3 semesters and including thesis of FaceTime art school. It's going to be interesting to, see these people judge these things and, offer critiques and feedback on a space that they can't, or on a feeling that they can't, understand or relate to nor explain, but, still, because we're in an institutional framework, they can still, validate somehow. So it's really going to be interesting. Like, right now, nobody's seen this yet. It's gotten feedback from a few people, like, going into it. And it's something that I'm excited to see how it goes. And really, there's only one person that, I legitimately care who, how they feel about it. And, that's Amy. She's been so much more than just a professor these past 2 semesters. And it's like, I couldn't have asked for a better mentor professor, teacher, leader, like the list goes on, like, and my thing was like, even in finishing school and, deciding to, keep living through this entire thing, it's, to give her something back for the work that she put into not only me, but to, my peers and everything. So it's really, this is something that outside of institutional validation, this is for validation from this one incredible, creative, this incredible woman. And that's why, I went through with, finishing this entire thing, and why I'm here talking, I guess, into my phone, but you guys can hear me too. So that's really the target audience as far as like people I need to initially understand this. And of course, other people, I want you to get it, but this project is the most difficult thank you note to Amy, but also to, all the other Black professors at Parsons that that I felt seen through, like, coming here, and also all of my peers. So this is like, it's my final thank you. Not really a goodbye, more so of a see you later. So that's, for Amy, Sebastian, Terry, Kim, all of you guys. Like, I really, there's no way I would have lived through this if it wasn't for, the experiences that I had, like, learning in these classes. If it wasn't for you guys, there's no way I could have did it. So thank you. And I really hope that you guys enjoy this entire project, or, I hope that it, interests you in some way. And I hope that I've done something with what you guys have taught me, and, I hope to continue realizing that knowledge, and keeping it, and, sort of keeping, all that going forward into, professional practice and my works outside of Parsons. So again, thank you guys, and this has been BPB Design Podcast, Episode 1, Equity by Design. Thank you.